Okay, everybody, we are going to get started with today's webinar. We are at the top of the hour, noontime here central in Minneapolis, Minnesota, 1 o'clock out on the East Coast, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Hope everyone is doing well. I want to thank you all for joining me for the webinar. This is actually the first Wednesday webinar that we've done in 2019 because unfortunately our January webinar was postponed. I am using new webinar software. I'm using Zoom, which we use for our, anybody who's had to do one-on-one meetings with any of our support staff or your success managers knows that we use Zoom for those one-on-one meetings, but they also have webinar software, and we decided to start using that as well. And we have had no problems with Zoom whatsoever, except for one probably 3-hour window in January in which we were actually scheduled for doing the January Wednesday webinar. So it was, we didn't get a chance to kick off the new year with the webinar. I hope everyone can hear me okay in this new format. We do have you should see in the window that you're looking at a Q&A button that is somewhere on your screen. And that will allow you to ask any questions when we get to that section where I'm going to be taking questions. So obviously nobody can, if you can't hear me, you can't say I can't hear you, but I'm assuming everyone can hear me okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started. It's our first Wednesday webinar of 2019, the February Wednesday webinar. And for a recap for people who have not sat in on these Wednesday webinars before, this is where we show you some of the tips and tricks to get the most out of TimeSolv. Those of you that are firm owners and administrators of your TimeSolv account, you know that we send out a weekly tip of the week, which we try to highlight, again, some features you may not have known that TimeSolv had, new things that we've added to the program, things that you may have learned when you got trained 2 years ago, but you may have forgotten about. And then we synthesize those 4 to 5 tips of the week down and present them as this webinar every month. This is like your TimeSolv CLE for those that are the actual lawyers that are joining us here for the webinar. So we're going to cover 5 topics today. We should go about 45 minutes or so, I'm guessing. No more than an hour, which is what we had scheduled. So let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to cover these particular topics. And again, for those who haven't sat in before, where do I get these topics for the tip of the week and for the webinar? Every week I ask our support staff, what are you hearing from customers? What calls are you getting frequently over and over again, whatever it might be, on something within TimeSolv, and let's then cover it in the tip of the week. And that's generally how we get here. And then of course we have a couple things I want to show you that's brand new with TimeSolv. So this week we're going to talk about the different formats of the reporting section of TimeSolv. Then an oldie but a goodie, but one we do probably once a quarter because it is that frequent of a question, is contacts, how to manage your contacts, and in this case, avoiding creating duplicate contacts for your clients and matters. Then we're going to talk about how you can quickly view your outstanding invoices that haven't been paid, and resend those invoices to your clients. It's one of those things that is hidden in plain sight, if you will, on how to do that from our sent invoices screen. But we think this is a nice little tool or feature to be able to use to resend invoices for those pesky clients who are in arrears with their payments. Then we have a new little feature, really, but I think a nice one that we just rolled out a couple of weeks ago, and that is the ability, when you're at the draft invoice level, to check those invoices as review completed. And this is a nice thing for any firm that has some sort of approval process before the invoices get sent out. This will kind of formalize that process a little bit and make it easier for those that are billing managers to know that, hey, this is ready to be sent off. Then the last thing we'll take a look at is setting up and managing the commissions area for your attorneys, or your professionals, your timekeepers. This, again, is a question that we get a lot, and we want to make sure that you're taking advantage of the ability to actually calculate the commission that you may have set up as payment for your timekeepers. So that's what we're going to cover today, and let's go ahead and get started and talk about reporting formats. We're going to cover the different format options, and then how to determine the best option for you. And this won't take a ton of time here, but I do want to be able to show you this quickly. So here we are. Whoop, we're not here anymore. Hold on a quick second. Technical difficulties. There we go. We are logged into our TimeSolv account, and we want to talk about the different formats for reports. So we're under our reports section here, and as most of you probably know, we have, I think, 31, 32 different types of reports, but it's the formats that you may not be as familiar with that you can download these for. Like one, a common one that you guys probably do a lot is your, aged invoices, your AR basically, your WIP, whatever it might be. So let's just go to aged invoices. And you can do whatever you want to do. As you know, there's a lot of different options. You want to include all your clients. You want to include inactive clients as well, matters and so on. But here's the thing, that the formatting itself, by default, all of your reports are going to be formatted as a PDF file, which makes the report itself a nice, clean looking report, kind of does what you need to do. But oftentimes we know that there are people out there that they want to run a report and then do something with that report. They want to manipulate the data in some fashion. And the obvious place is usually in Excel if you maybe want to run formulas or do something other, maybe some sophisticated accounting. So in this case, I want to make sure you're clear that if you decide to download a report as an Excel file, all that's going to, let's just go ahead and download, generate a report of our aged invoices. So it's creating the report, it's calculating it. I have a lot of aged invoices, I know, because a lot of the invoices that I create in my dummy system here, I never do apply payments to them. So I know this is going to take longer than most people's aged invoices. I probably should have chosen another report to generate. There we go. Now it's ready. I'm going to download it. It's a PDF here, and you can see it's a nice looking PDF, and it shows me all of my various aged invoices that I have out there for all these various clients. This is a lot of aged invoices, isn't it? If I decide that I want to do this report as a Excel file, you can see I have two different choices of the types of Excel file. All it's really going to do is it's going to look, as you're going to see, pretty much just like this PDF, but just in Excel format. And you'll see what I mean here in a second once it's generated. Like I said, I should have paged another type of report. Maybe next time I'll just do for a couple clients so it's not doing the whole thing. I feel like being a good Minnesotan up here, I should start talking about the weather while we wait. Okay, so now I'm going to open it up in Excel. Again, I downloaded it specifically as an Excel file. And there it is opening. So you can see it's formatted just kind of like it was before. It's hard to manipulate this file in any particular way. You could still do some stuff, but it's not really built for that when you download it as an Excel file. So the option, if you want to do something with the data, I would choose CSV. And then, again, let's just do like one client. Because as a CSV file, then you can really, do the things that you want to do, apply formulas, sort in a proper way to have the oldest invoice come up first or whatever it might be. Well, obviously choosing just one client, it hasn't sped up the process of generating this report now, has it? But the point is that be careful or be thoughtful about the reports. There are a lot you can do with them once you generate them if you need to. And I'm going to open up this CSV file, and you'll see the difference of what it looks like. See, now this is a file that you can more readily work with this data if you need to for whatever reason. Okay, much more so than this one, which is essentially the same report, but it's just formatted in a, I don't know, for lack of a better term, a prettier way. So I would just make sure that you're aware of choosing the type of format for outputting. As you can see, we have lots of different options. I'm not sure why you would ever want to download a report as a PowerPoint or even as a Word file. Maybe Word if you are just like there, you have to have it in some certain font because that's just the way you are. I suppose you could do it as a Word file and then change the fonts, whatever you might want to do. So that's really the main thing I wanted to show about the reports in the different format. And that question does come up frequently enough that we decided to cover that here. So let's move on then and talk about our next tip here. And then, oh, by the way, I didn't mention this at the top, but again, for those who haven't sat in on these webinars before, Q&A session I want to do after we get done presenting all of these tips, only because you might find as I get through a lot of these, your question ends up eventually being answered. And I think it's just best to wait until the finish to do the Q&A or to take questions. So just a reminder on that. Okay, so let's again talk about contacts. If you've been on more than one of these webinars, you've eventually probably sat in and heard about the contacts functionality in TimeSolv. Frankly, and I'll be perfectly honest, not probably the most intuitive thing that's available in TimeSolv. It can get somewhat complicated, but there's reasons behind that in that we do give you a lot of flexibility in what contacts are going to actually appear on an invoice. So first, more than anything else, I think it's important to emphasize if you set a contact at the client level, this actually should say client level, not matter level. Whoops. If you set a contact at the client level before you even create any matters, and they're going to be the only ones to ever receive an invoice, you don't need to input it again ever. I'm going to actually change that right now because it's important enough. That should say at the client level. Okay, so the next step is to talk about there's a difference between, by default, when you create a contact, either you have several options to choose what type of contact. For invoicing purposes, the two main ones to be concerned about is somebody who's labeled as a main contact and somebody that's labeled as an optional invoice contact. And the difference, again, there is that if there's somebody different than your main contact who should be receiving the invoice, that contact, once they are created in TimeSolv, should be labeled as an optional invoice contact. The obvious example is you're working for a company of some sort, let's say, is your client, and the person you're actually working with on the matter says, yeah, send the invoice to my accounting department to so-and-so, and here's their email address. They should get the invoice, not me. Then you would, but you still want that person to obviously be the main contact in TimeSolv. So in that case, you would create a second contact, label them as optional invoice. They're the ones who would receive the invoice. And I'm going to show you as well how that, in that scenario I just described, the person might say, yes, send the invoice to so-and-so in the accounting department, but can you make sure that a copy of the invoice gets sent to me so I can review it? And we'll show you how you can add additional email addresses to your matters and your clients and matters, so that that person can receive the invoice as well as the main person whose name will be on the invoice. And I want to review again the hierarchy of how, when you're creating a draft invoice, how does TimeSolv go about finding the contact to put on the invoice? And it's very hierarchical, and that's how all of TimeSolv is really. First, we'll check at the lowest potential level. And that is, it'll look for the specific matter you're creating an invoice for. It'll check for a contact there with a label of optional invoice. If it doesn't see anybody who meets that criteria, there's no contact at the matter level, there's no contact at the matter level labeled optional invoice, it's going to say, okay, is there a contact at the matter level whose type is main? If so, it'll go on the invoice. If there's no contact associated with the specific matter, it'll next go up to the client level. And again, it'll look first for any contact who has the label optional invoice, put it on the invoice. If there's no contact with that label, it then goes to the contact that's labeled as main. If there's no contact associated with the client at all, then just the client name itself will appear on the invoice. It won't have a name, the address, a phone number, anything, any of that information. So let's show how that works in reality here. So I'm going to go over to my client and matters list. And really I could look at any matter. Let's just go to August webinar. So I'm at the client level right now, and I have a contact here. In this case, I have, this isn't a good one because I associated Terry Bradshaw with both a matter and at the client level. So let's look at this one, consultant client. I don't think I've done anything with this one. Okay, I do. At this level, I have a main contact, Dane Block. Okay, that is the main contact at this level. What if, let's go ahead and disassociate this contact or edit this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit on associations for Dane. I'm going to uncheck everything. So now I'm going to go back, and under the consultant client, there's no contact here. Now, if for some reason, and this is rarely would happen, but let's just say for some reason, you know that this contact for your new client, consultant client, is already in TimeSolv. You don't need to recreate them. You could go, right now it's going to show you any contacts that are already associated, as you can see here, with this client. You could just say, show me all contacts. And you know that that one contact already exists. You know, Dane, search for Dane, you found him. Then you could go ahead and click on associations and say, yes, I want that associated with August webinar. You could do that. Most likely, if you're creating a new client, you're probably going to be creating a new contact. Okay, so if you want to create then that new contact, obviously you go over here, and you've probably done this before, and you hit new contact. By default, the type is going to be main and not optional invoice. Don't worry about related party and other. That's for doing complex search stuff. You would put in all the various information about that person, and you would hit save. Okay. Now, if that is going to be that same contact is who you're going to be sending all of the various invoices for these matters, you don't have to do anything more. This is where people get in trouble in TimeSolv, is they will then feel like when they create a matter that they need to create another contact or put that same contact in again as, and they see like, well, there's nobody here. I need to create a new contact. Well, you could, because there's no contact associated. But because we know if you really wanted to associate it with the matter specifically, and you just had created that contact at the client level, you could come in here, find them, and associate them if you wanted to. You could say, yes, specifically for this matter, you know, I'm going to associate them and I'm going to call them main or whatever you know is what you want to call them. But again, let me emphasize, if you already have a contact at the client level, and it's going to be that contact is also the main contact for the specific matter, there's no reason to create a new contact or associate any contact with the specific matter. You don't need to do it. Now, in that scenario that I mentioned, you have a larger client and there's maybe multiple contacts, you're maybe working on multiple matters. And if you have for matter consultant, you know, consultant matter here that I have one contact, and then I have another matter that I'm going to work on, you know, consultant matter 2, and it's a different contact. Then obviously you'd want to do that, associate whatever contacts might already exist or create a whole brand new contact. Now, let's talk about that optional invoice situation that I talked about. We already have, I'll just go ahead and associate Dane Block again. And I'm under consultant client, right? It's the main contact. Save that association. And again, I'm just going to associate it. So now Dane Block is associated as the main contact for this client. But Dane tells me, don't send the invoice to me, send it to my accountant. Well, who's your accountant? Well, you got to create them as a new, and this time you're going to choose them as optional invoice contact. And let's just say that it's going to be Terry Nelson, whatever it might be. And more importantly, their email address is going to be, Terry Nelson at consultant.com, whatever. So now you have your main contact type and your optional invoice contact type. When you go to generate an invoice for this client, it's going to put Terry Nelson's name on that invoice. At this point, it's going to do it for any matter because it's optional invoice at the client level. Unless you specify, that you, for this very specific matter, you want an optional invoice. So you can see there's, different ways you can slice and dice this. And for firms that work with some, like I said, large clients, a corporation, there's multiple matters, multiple people you have to send it to. You have the ability to do all of that here within TimeSolv. Let's talk about the scenario I mentioned when we were on the PowerPoint where Dane says, yeah, send the invoice to Terry, but can you CC me on it so that I see a copy of the invoice when it's sent? Easy enough to do. When you're at the client level here, you can click on invoice settings. Then you're going to have this invoice delivery additional email field. Just type in Dane's email address and they will be CC'd on the invoice. If you need to add more than one, just do a comma and add another email address. Okay? You could also do that specific at the matter level too. When you're looking at a particular matter, you can go to invoice settings and add additional emails. Again though, if you've already added it at the client level and it's going to be the same person, you don't need to do it here again. It'll check here first, but if it doesn't see anybody here for additional emails, it's going to go up to the client level and check there too. So my emphasis is that most of the time, I'm assuming most of the time, you can manage all your contacts just at the client level. Unless you have very specific contacts you have to associate with a particular matter. But generally speaking, you can manage it at the client level. Another good way to manage, and this is a little bit different from managing contacts, but oftentimes those of you that send your invoices via email should know, when you do send them by email, a copy of that email is automatically sent to the firm owner, whoever is associated as the main email address for your account gets a copy of those invoices sent. But if you have a particular attorney who I want to see a copy of just my invoices for the work I just want a copy for the work I've done. I want to get CC'd on that. That's where, again, you can do that at this additional email level. So when you have a client who, I work on August webinar, I want to make sure I get CC'd on all those invoices sent for August webinar. You could go to August webinar as your client and add yourself as the additional email for the invoice delivery. So that's a way that anybody at your firm other than the firm owner main email that you have can receive the invoices CC'd by doing this, by adding the additional email here. Okay. Hopefully that covers fairly, I hope eloquently, how to make sure you don't have to create duplicates. If you know that you have a contact you've created in the past in TimeSolv, they are there. You don't need to recreate them. You simply could just, when you're at the client level or the matter level, when you come here and you see associated, change this to all, do a search, find that person that's already existing in your system, come over to associations and say, and then you can start typing so you don't have to see all of this. You could just start, best, I want to show all the Best Buy and associate them either at the full client level or to specific matters, okay? And then designate the type, okay? All right, let's move on. All right, tip number 3 here. This actually came up from a question a client had, and again, this is an answer that's kind of in plain sight, but the idea that you have outstanding invoices, how to resend them when you need to. So you're going to do this from the sent invoices screen. You're going to put in the dates that you want to view any outstanding invoices for a particular date range. Then you can do a sort by the balance, and then you can resend them. It's actually pretty simple. And I think a very nice little tool. If you haven't used this before, this might be the the fun tip of the week that you know have never considered before that you're going to actually really end up using the next time you're doing your invoicing. So again, you simply head over to invoices to your sent screen. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you put in the search criteria. Let's just say I want to see all sent invoices for, let's just say, the whole second half of 2017, or 2018, I should say. So I'm going to go from July 1st, 2018 to December 31st. God, 20. Hello, there we go, 20. Okay, so July 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2018. Show me all my sent invoices. Wonderful, here they are. By default, they're going to be sorted by invoice number. As you can see, the invoice numbers are going down here. But what you want to do here is you want to, any one of these columns, as you hopefully know, you can sort by. You just have to just click on it. So in this case, we're going to click on balance. You click on it once, and it's going to show you, it's going to start by doing all your paid invoices. Wonderful. But click on it one more time, and it's going to reverse the order, and it's going to show you your outstanding balances for this date range in highest numerical, dollar amount down to the lowest. In some ways, this could be your running AR report when you think about it. You're seeing now all your outstanding balances essentially for the particular date range that you've created. So, and it's in the order that you'd probably want to see it. Who owes me the most money for this date range? In this case, it's this consultant client, and the matter is consultant matter. So we want to resend these invoices, right? So just check the box of all the ones that you want to resend. I have a lot right here. You'd have to go in down and just check all of these. You can see once they're all checked, once I checked the first one, this resend button went from being grayed out to being available. Just click that button. It's going to resend all of those invoices to the client. Okay. Again, this is kind of a in plain sight kind of thing, but some people have asked the question a lot, like, oh, can you run an AR report that's with the highest owing person at the top and so on? Where you're like, well, you can output it again to a CSV file and sort that way if you'd like. But to me, in my mind, this is the fastest way to have a running AR report. Just do it by the date range you need and sort by balance. You just remember, you're going to hit it twice. First time you hit it, it's going to sort by pay. It's going to show all the paid invoices first. Click it one more time, and there you go. It's going to show you who's still owing you money for that date range of your sent invoices, and it'll show the highest owing person first. I think that's a fun little thing. I would love to, if I was the one having to keep track of all this, I would be using this all day, every day, to make sure I'm on top of the people that need to, that owe me money. Okay, let's go on. Tip number 4. This is a new feature that was just rolled out a couple of weeks ago, latter part of January, actually. And that is the ability to mark draft invoices as review completed, so that the billing manager would have a very safe knowledge that the invoice is ready to be sent out. All of the people who need to check off and review it have that completed. So let's go ahead and just show you quickly how you can do that. I'm going to go to my draft invoice screen here. And hopefully most of you know that when you're viewing your draft invoices, and again, right now it's by default going to sort by alphabetically by a client. You could sort it by the date you created the draft invoice, you could sort it by amount, and so on. And hopefully a lot of you know that the status column here, we have a couple of icons to really assist you in knowing what the status, what the status is of these draft invoices. If there's nothing here, that means nothing's happened with this draft invoice. Nobody's looked at it, nobody's reviewed it, nobody's clicked it. If you have this pencil icon, it means this draft invoice has been edited. If you have the I icon, it means it has been viewed. And what does viewed mean? Viewed means you've actually clicked on the dollar amount. You don't have to even make any changes, but you've just taken a look around, looked at the narratives, looked at the time entries, you've looked at it, you've viewed it. So when I go back now, you can see I have another viewed one here, okay? But let's talk about, hey, I want to make sure there's somebody who I have to know that these reviews have been completed. This is where we have the new feature, and you might have seen this icon here, this checkbox, review completed. Well, how do we get to that? Simply click on the dollar amount of the invoice, and on this general screen, you have a new row here called review completed. Check the box, hit save, go back, and the checkbox is there, review completed. This is a great way for you, and again, you can then sort by the status, and you'll be able to see who has viewed the review completed and ones that have been actually edited. And the ones that have been edited, you'd probably want to come back, they've been edited, and, excuse me, the review has been completed. Again, a great visual way to see, excuse me, if you're a billing manager and you're going through your whole list here and you get interrupted for some reason, when you come back to your draft invoice screen, you don't have to guess, what was the last invoice that I reviewed? Similarly then, if you have somebody who, one of the partners at the firm, the owner, the CEO, whoever it might be, they, say, I need to review every single one, then again, they can come in here and this will tell the billing manager, yes, these have actually been looked at. They have been reviewed. It's important to note that just because you might download and view these as the actual PDF, it's like, okay, a lot of attorneys will like to. I know some attorneys that they insist that you literally print these draft invoices and they redline it with a red pen, like a school teacher, hand it back to you as the billing manager, then you have to go in and edit that. I hope that if there's an attorney that insists on doing that you can talk to them as much as possible that is a super inefficient way to review and edit draft invoices. But the point is that just by downloading them here, or even just viewing it in this preview invoice screen, which is a less intrusive way of viewing that PDF. You don't have to actually download it to your screen. Oh, I got a little hung up here. By downloading or hitting the review button here, you do not, or the preview button, I should say, that doesn't necessarily mark the status as that it's been viewed. You have to actually click that dollar amount. This is wonderful. I'm super glad that it's hung up right now. Let's stop that. Boy, I don't know what happened here. There we go. But these invoices there that I downloaded and that I was previewing, they don't get marked status just because you've done these things over here. You have to actually click on this dollar amount and do a review in that fashion to get the eyeball status that it's been viewed, to get the review completed status. Obviously, you have to check that box, or obviously to do the edit button. But again, another layer of, I think, ease in preparing these draft invoices and getting them out is by doing that review completed. Okay, our last tip then, let's talk about setting up and managing the commissions for your attorneys. And this is a popular thing that comes up, frequently, I should say. Frequently enough that we decided to do it as a tip of the week, let's put it that way. Enabling commissions and running the commissions report and so on, so you can easily see who's owed what if you have a commission structure at your firm. So first of all, you have to make sure you've enabled commissions in your settings, because that is not turned on by default. So you want to go under your account to settings. And then down here at the bottom of the general tab, the tab you land on when you go under account settings, you'll see enable commissions, and there's a checkbox. You can turn it on or off. You can determine, if you'd like, a firm-wide commission on all invoices that are generated. And you can do it either by an actual amount or by a percent. So let's say that you generally, and I'm just making this up from an accounting point of view, you designate that 50% of all invoices generated, that money should go to a firm general account, like for firm overhead or whatever it might be. You could then put that 50% in here per invoice and then run a report every month to see, like, okay, here's how much money we should, of the money we collected or that we invoiced, that we should designate as that firm overhead fund, whatever the case might be. More frequently, I know that a lot of firms will have set up a commission structure for their individual lawyers. So how do you go about setting that up? First, make sure that box is checked, enable commissions. Then you need to go to each one of your professionals here. And when you click on their name, over here in the right-hand column, you have an area here for commissions. You just click on this edit commissions. I'm going to delete these two so that it's, what you're basically doing is setting up how much commission this timekeeper, in this case Tony Hill, will receive, and if they will receive that commission on every one of the clients and matters that they do time entries for. That's, I don't want to make sure there's no confusion. If you do all and all, it doesn't mean that Tony's going to get a commission off every single client and matter that's in your system. He's going to get a commission off every single client and matter that he makes time entries for, he himself alone. It's for all of his clients and matters. You could, if you wanted, designate a specific client commission, or you can just leave it at all. You could say, yes, he's going to get a 5% commission on every single time entry that he makes, every client, every matter. You could decide, but you know what? He really worked his butt off on bringing in client A, so we're going to give him a 10% commission on every work that he does for that. Or you could say, you know what, though, we want to give him a good commission on this very specific client and matter. So not everything that he does for Best Buy, but just this 102.1, dash 113 versus Samsung matter, we want to give him a really good commission on that. So you can do that. So you can create as many different types of commissions as you'd like. Generally speaking, for most firms, you're going to just use this all and all. So all time entries that are made, fees that are collected, commission will be whatever you designate here. And of course, you can always edit that and change the commission percentage if you'd like. In some cases, and I was talking to our support people yesterday, you may have a commission manager who gets a cut of their cut. And you can designate that here. You can designate a commission manager and what their percentage is going to be. But like I said, talking to the support people yesterday, he said, and he's been here for several years, he thinks he's only run across that scenario maybe one time where somebody actually had a commission manager who needed to have a percent designated. So this is how you're going to do commissions for each one of your working attorneys, if you will. The ones who are actually doing the work, and they get a commission on their time entries. So you'd have to do that, obviously, one timekeeper at a time. Now, however, you can designate a commission for one of your attorneys at the matter level. No matter who makes the time entries, they could get a commission. So let's take a look at just this test matter here. You can designate that. Well, first of all, let me double check. Yeah, you need to do it at the matter level specifically. We have what's called a responsible professional and originating professional. Responsible professional, you can think of as this is the professional making sure all the work is getting done, and they could receive a commission on everybody's time entries. And you can put in the percent amount, obviously. Okay, let's say it's 5%. You could also perhaps have somebody who is, you pay a finder's fee, if you want to call it that, at your firm. The originating professional may not even be an attorney. If there are firms I know that are big enough, they have an entire marketing person who their full-time job is to go get new clients for the firm. And perhaps they are paid on commission. So you could say this is the originating professional, is this person, and we give them 2% of every you know, of all the fees collected from this particular matter. You could do that if you'd like. If I would suggest, if you do that scenario where perhaps you are you have an originating fee or a finder's fee, and you don't necessarily need to do a responsible professional, just put them in as a responsible professional if you'd like. I only say that because there's more reporting that can be include responsible professional information than there is with the originating professional. So just to be clear. Now, a question has come up, and again, I know this came up a couple of weeks ago. If you have somebody, let's just say this Tony Hill that we had Tony Hill getting 5% commission off of everything, right? Everything that he does time entry wise. If you were to come into this matter, put Tony Hill as the responsible professional as well, and add a commission percentage, this person would also kind of double dip on their time entries for this matter. If you understand what I'm saying, they're already getting, let's say, 5% off any time entry they make, including this one, including this test matter. Then if you label them as the responsible professional, they're going to get 5% off every time entry for this matter, including their own. So essentially they would get 10% commission off their own time entries for this matter. Now, if somebody else at the firm does a time entry for this matter, then he would get this 5% here. So there is the possibility of some double dipping if you have it set up that way. But again, that's somewhat of a rare scenario. So then let's talk about how you figure out who owes what, or who gets what from a commission percentage. So you go over to reports here. Go ahead and save this. Go over to reports. You want to, thank you. You want to come down here to performance and revenue and commissions. And then you could view it by client, by matter only. Let's just do a particular, I want to do it by matter. And I'm going to choose one that I was looking at just yesterday because it'd be easy enough to see. I believe it was this Landry and Company, Plano Road apartment construction. Okay, it's going to show me any responsible professional. I want to include the professional, responsible professional section. And I want to include originating professional. So you want to make sure those boxes are checked. Okay. And then I'm going to hit generate report. And when we open this, you can see here I have myself, Scott Laidlaw. I have my own revenue commission, 20%. So here's all the various invoices, what we invoiced, what was collected. Okay. The 20% I get here, that's just my straight commission. Then I also have a responsible professional, Tom Rafferty. I have them set at 5%. Let's go and look at that just so we're sure, you know, we're looking at the right, so you understand what how it was set up. We're going to go to Landry and Company. So you can see I have Tom Rafferty set up as my responsible professional. He's getting 5%. I myself, and then we have Dennis Thurman, who's set up as the originating professional at 5%. I myself, that Scott Laidlaw, is set up. My commission is I get 20% of every time entry that I've done. And obviously I did the time entries for this particular matter. So I have my responsible professional, Tom Rafferty. He's getting 5%. So here's his total. And then I have my originating professional, Dennis Thurman. Here's his total. He's getting 5% too. So you can see how that, you know, the revenue report is the critical thing that you need for the time period that you designate to say, okay, so now when we're cutting paychecks, you need to make sure we add this commission to, you know, Tom's paycheck that month and so on. Okay. So generally speaking, you'll use this edit commission here for each timekeeper and do, most of the time you'll probably do everything for their time entries. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward stuff. I do have a question here. It's kind of a long question from Lori. I'm going to, let me read this here. I'd like to have my folks review invoices electronically, but each timekeeper needs to look at the invoices they have time on. But I don't want everyone having access to all invoices. The permission settings don't appear to allow for that. Plus, I need to see that each attorney has approved each invoice they have time on, but the invoice is going to be marked as approved once. Yeah, that is, Laura, you're right there. One thing you can do that I would suggest is having that review process done before you generate the draft invoices by using our approval feature. So this is getting a little off the, our normal track here, but if you have under time and settings, notify approvers via email. Okay, do you want to enable approvals by matter? You can need to enable this information. Then you need to set for each professional, like say Tony Hill, okay, you need to manage approvers. So if you can sort of have them approve themselves, if you will, if you'd like, manage approvers. You could say, yeah, I have to review every person's time entry before it can get placed on an invoice. And then they get an email once a day basically saying you have time entries to go approve, and they can go under time, approve time, and see their list and approve it before it gets placed on an invoice. So that's one way, I suppose. The other thing is, you're right. When it comes to invoices itself, there isn't a way. I don't believe there's a way in the permissions. I've never looked at this before. So if they could see the, yeah, it's just view only, so they'll be able to see all of the other invoices or view how to create, not just their own, if you allow them access to the invoice area. And then obviously knowing which attorney, if the attorney has approved it or not. Because you're right, that's a good suggestion on maybe allowing, the approval. I think, maybe one way we could iterate this as TimeSolv to make it, oops, let me go under, I actually need to go under drafts, is perhaps we set it so that when you click on this and review completed, there could be a field to say who's completing that review or who, checked this box. Perhaps is one way around it. I'm just thinking off the top of my head as an idea. But yeah, those are, you're right, those are struggles, and that's where you would perhaps need to print off the draft invoices, have the attorney kind of, initial it, make the changes, and in that case, yes, you're going to still have those inefficiencies. That's a good suggestion. Yeah, to work on improving that once it's at a draft invoice level, making sure that the review is done and not allowing the attorneys to see all the other invoices that are going out. Do we have any other questions at this point? Because we are through our all of our tips. So please, obviously the Q&A is working, I'm glad, in our new software. If you have any questions about anything that I just covered, now is the time to submit them. Otherwise, as always, you can email your questions to support@timesolv.com. You can call us at 1-800-715-1284. And while we did, again, for those who have been on these webinars previously, we had an idea portal where you could submit feature requests and feature update suggestions online. That idea portal is being transitioned to another service that we're using. So it's not available right now, but we do know that it will be coming back at some point in time. So you can easily submit your suggestions. And then the beauty of the ideas portal was that other users could upvote on the idea. You could go to the ideas portal, look at what everybody else has put in for ideas and say, hey, oh yeah, that looks like a good idea. Upvote on it. And then the number of upvotes that, each idea receives helps inform our dev team that, yeah, hey, yes, this is an important feature that we should really get into play because it's being requested by a number of people. So that's going to do it for this month's Wednesday webinar. One quick plug, if anybody is going to be at the ABA Tech Show in Chicago at the end of this month, it's the 27th, 28th, and March 1st at the Hyatt Regency. We will be there exhibiting. If you do attend that show, you're in the Midwest. I generally tends to be a regional show now, I think, than anything else. But if you do plan on appearing at the ABA Tech Show, please come down to the exhibit area and say hi to us. We love meeting our clients. We will be attending some other State Bar Association events later this year as well. And as they come nearer, I'll do reminders like this as well. We were just in New York in January for the New York State Bar Association annual meeting, ran into some customers there as well, which was, again, always gratifying. We love meeting you all in person. So otherwise, I don't have any other questions that came in. So we will wrap this up. I have recorded this session. I will send out an email with a link to review this if you so need to. It also will be posted on the TimeSolv YouTube channel so that you could send this on to other colleagues at your firm if they would like to take a look at these tips as well. So without any further ado, thank you, everybody. We will see you for next month's webinar, and that will be quickly, let me look, it's the second Wednesday of every month, so that should be March 13th is when we will be doing our next Wednesday webinar. I hope to see you all then. Have a great rest of the week. Happy Valentine's Day for tomorrow, and we'll talk to you next month. Thanks, everybody.